if you're carrying that expectation, you cannot pick up anything else. So you literally have to set that down so that your mind and heart can be open to how the team and the organization needs you to be as a leader.
Carrying the unrealistic expectation that a leadership title means having all the answers leaves your hands too full to pick up anything else. True leadership requires us to intentionally set down that unrealistic, heavy burden so that your mind and heart can open up to what your team actually needs. When we trade the pressure of absolute certainty, knowing everything, if you will, for curiosity and deep listening, we then unlock the real power of collective thought.
Leadership sound bites, real leaders, real moments, real growth.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites. And clearly, from my excitement, you can tell this is a very special guest.
Thank you.
Trina White. Well, it's true. Trina White, and I don't even know how long we've known each other.
A long time.
Like,
more than 10 years.
yeah, it's been a minute. You're now, you have been for more than a minute, assistant professor at University of Nebraska Medical Center, UNMC. I have to visualize the letters in my head. And then you threw out the title that I went, what? The director of the MHA program there, which is super cool. And I'm kind of jealous that I already have my MHA.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I'm not going to get another one, by the way. Not going to
Okay.
go through there again. Not getting two MHAs. Yeah, she did a double master's, the same master's twice. And you and I met at Sutter Health, and I remember it was in the change management ACE program there. And I was thinking about that as we got ready to record today. It's like the history, right, of what we went through and how we just ended up staying connected through all of it. And I'm just a fan. I am a
Likewise.
friend and a fan, and you're one of I'm serious. You're one of the people that when I think about um, great leadership, great human, you lead from the heart. Um, you're it. I mean, you're
Oh,
like, and yeah, you've got, opportunities and all the stuff like the rest of us. And I think that that's what draws people in, Trina, is because there's not this, I've arrived. And I watched you and cheerleaded as you went up in the organization at Sutter Health. And I remember one day when it was a morning that you called me and you'd been interviewing and you'd gotten the job offer. And I remember you poor thing, I screamed in your ear. I'm like, oh
thank
my
you.
God. So it's just cool to be back in the room with you again.
Likewise. Likewise. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan as well. And I'm honored to be here on your podcast today.
Yeah, it's cool. You're doing awesome stuff, and I love to watch it. So this morning before we hit record, we're recording in the morning. I was like, "So you have a quote?" And you're like, "Quote?" So, I'm gonna resurrect one that I may have shared before during one of the other podcasts. It's one of my favorites because of the topic you and I talked about around mindfulness and the importance of that with everything going on now. Actually, it's always been important. I think more so than ever before, the importance of incorporating it into our lives. It's from Dr. Ellen Langer. She may not have intended it as a quote. It was a quotable moment, I'll say it that way, when I was listening to the Huberman Labs podcast. It was around mindfulness, and what she said was she referred to mindfulness as paying attention. And she went on to say that when you know that you don't know, then you pay attention. And when you pay attention, you will see things that otherwise you might have been blind to. And when I think about that and when I take apart, because I've said it so many times now, because literally, like I said to you, I went in and wrote it down when I heard it. Of course, I had to back and then replay again, which is what you can do on podcasts. But I wrote it down and I went, this is powerful stuff because if we just sit in it for a minute to pay attention to what she's saying, is that as leaders and humans in life, as long as we can go into situations, right? Because knowing that we don't know, which if we're honest with ourselves, it's every moment that we're going to be living, we don't know. And so when we go into those moments knowing that we're open and we're curious and we're suspending judgment, arrogance, all the other stuff that gets packaged up with believing that we know, and then we start learning and seeing things that otherwise we would have been blind to.
I just love that. I love that. What a way to frame the conversation that we had planned for today. I love that quote. You hit me with it right before we got on. And so I'm a processor. Um, one of the people I work with right now, who's very wise, says there's kind of two kinds of thinkers. One is a microwave thinker who's really quick and so, so fast on their feet. And the other is a crockpot thinker. I am a crockpot thinker, unless there's an emergency, which then I can kind of pivot. But barring emergency, I like to process. I like to process. So it's given me a chance to sit with that a little bit, Michele. And one of the things that comes to mind is I had great parents, and my dad said, "The older I get, the less I know." And I thought, you know, it hits you at in different ways as you move through your life. And when I was young and I heard that, I thought, and I had tons of respect for my dad always, and I thought, what an interesting, what an interesting thing to say. And how vulnerable and what kind of confidence must he have to be able to say something like that and then share it with others. So I liked it right away from the beginning. But now as I evolve and age myself, I think, what that was such a smart quote. And I feel like it's really tied to what you led off with today, too. And as leaders, if you look at what traditional leadership styles and traditional leadership models expected, the leader is expected to know everything and be everything and do everything. And now we shouldn't carry that with us. We should say leadership is a team sport. And if we go in knowing things, we're going to miss the things that people have to teach us, the things that life has to teach us. So I'm loving my dad's quote and living with that every day. The older I get, the less I know. And how exciting and fun that is to kind of approach life that way, because it ties into all sorts of things we try to focus on and grow in ourselves as leaders, like humble inquiry. And it also connects to something else we wanted to talk about today, mindfulness, and the power of mindfulness. And one of the things I think about when I practice mindfulness is being present in the moment and seeing what the person in front of me has to teach me. Practicing deep listening, practicing what their experiences and ideas and feedback is versus what mine is, quieting my mind to be able to really focus on what their perspectives are. So that's a little bit that comes to mind when you share your quote this morning, and I really appreciate it.
It's interesting that there's so much that it triggers is probably not the right word, but there's so much that it connects to my thoughts. And what happens as you were talking about that is these, I'm going to call them touch points that I have with humans and conversations that I have with people that I'm in the room with as a coach. And it's these learning moments that we have with leaders, whether we've got more experience under our belt and we've just sort of rolled into what leadership is based on what we saw. There was real no intentionality. It's just, we're just copy and pasting from what we know. And what you describe with the mindfulness, it is about intentionally showing up a different way and not just regurgitating what we may have been exposed to before. And it takes an effort. It's not brain surgery, and it's very difficult as we transition from a way of showing up around people like you said, leaders, and I've heard them say this because I hear the weight of the responsibility on their shoulders. And they're like, well, I'm the director now. I'm the whatever now, and I have to have the answers. I remember looking at this one later and I said, so who's telling you that? And I remember he sat back and he said, myself. I said,
Exactly.
yeah. And I said, it's an unrealistic expectation.
Yes.
No
Yes.
one knows everything.
That's right. That's right. And I would say, even one step further, if you're carrying that expectation, you cannot pick up anything else. So you literally have to set that down so that your mind and heart can be open to how the team and the organization needs you to be as a leader.
Hmm.
Meet the team where they're at. And
Hmm.
part of that is not thinking that you have to have all the answers and that you have to be the only answer. The power of the team
Hmm.
um, is pulling in that diversity of thought. And if you if you think you have to have all the answers, even if you're not being arrogant about it, um, if you think that, you're not going to be open to the diversity of thought that your team is trying to give you.
Well, and the other part of it too, Trina, I go back to this thing that happens in our brains when we go into where people are stressed, overwhelmed, burnout, any approaching that, right? And just this, let's just talk about the stress piece. When you're in that stress mode, when you're feeling that, and oh, by the way, if you've told yourself you have to have all the answers, do you think you're just skipping through life?
Oh no, no,
No,
no,
you got the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? So
exactly,
you're going to step
exactly.
into that space of stress. And when we're in that space of stress, we signal to the subconscious we're not safe. We go into fight or flight survivor brain, depending on how stressed we are. And then what happens? It shuts down all the creative learning centers that we need to show up as our best self. All the creativity, innovation, critical thinking, empathy, all the stuff shuts it down
Yes, yes,
because it's readying us to run from the hungry tiger. There's no hungry tiger. And so that shift is so powerful to be able to go, let me set that unrealistic expectation aside and realize, to your point, I'm a member of a team. And so I'm going to look at that this way. This may be me, the rest of the team. We're all players on the team. We just have different roles, but it's not
exactly.
this. It's
No,
not this.
no, no. And going back to what you said, there's hard science on the fact that your brain cannot operate in fight or flight
Mhm.
and operate in creativity, systems thinking, strategic thinking. So if you continue to hold that idea that you must have all the answers and you're placing that amount of stress on yourself,
Mhm.
it will not open you up to the other things that you need to accomplish for your
Mhm.
team and your organization and your communities and your patients. So it is
Yeah.
so important to be able to let that go. I think it also ties to a couple of other things that we talk about a lot in leadership, and certainly in healthcare leadership. Um, People talk a lot about imposter syndrome.
Mm.
And this is anecdotal, but I feel like one of the primary drivers of imposter syndrome is not being able to let go of the concept that you as the leader need to have all the answers.
Mm.
When you let that go and start to lead with questions instead of answers, the syndrome goes away, just like the stress goes away. So I think it's really important to be able to practice that mindfulness and
Mhm.
the concept of I don't need to have all the answers as a leader because it will build your capabilities. It will build your effectiveness. The other thing that we talk about a lot in leadership and in healthcare is being able to mitigate burnout, especially when we've led through times of crisis like the pandemic, or we're leading through times of crisis like multiple policy changes that impact our ability to care for our patients and our communities. So being able to tap into mindfulness uh, and think about how to leverage that as a leader can really help us with leading in times of crisis as well, and mitigating burnout for ourselves, for our teams, for our providers, and for overall systems of care.
Yeah. So when you talk about mindfulness and tapping
Mm.
into mindfulness, because I know you're a professor, can you just share the program that you're in and then how that mindfulness awareness teaching gets incorporated in? Because I have a hard time believing that you're not talking to your students about this.
Well, we are talking about
Yeah.
we are talking about mindfulness, because mindfulness is one of the things that we consider to be a leadership intangible. And I don't even like that term, but it's one of the ways that people frame some of these aspects of leadership
Mhm.
that are abstract. So it's, to me, a leadership intangible, but I don't like intangible because it makes it sound as if it's not as important as practicing things like how to read a financial report. And it is. To me, it's table stakes. Being able to practice mindfulness as a leader is table stakes to being able to deliver some of these core skills, attributes, actions that we've always considered a part of important leadership. Mindfulness is a practice that can lead to better delivery of some of the things that we get evaluated on by our different
Mhm.
stakeholders, including our teams, our patients, our communities, our people that we report to. So being able to practice mindfulness, I think, is so important. Michele, to go back to a question that you had, I don't I don't know that I practice a certain type of mindfulness,
Yeah.
but I've looked at different resources, taken different classes myself to try to learn about it more. Um, I do not I do not say that I'm an expert. Mindfulness to me is not ever something that you have accomplished.
Mhm.
It's just not. It's something that you constantly have to practice, you constantly have to get better at. Um, and even if you start with just a little bit of mindfulness, it can make such a huge difference. You know, just a chance to be present, be quiet in the moment, pay attention to what's happening around you. It's as simple as practicing that a couple of minutes before your day starts. Um, thinking about some intention. How can I do better for my team today? How can I do better for my patients or my community today? And paying attention to what comes to you. Practices as simple as that can really help with incorporating mindfulness into your leadership style, into your
Mhm.
professional career. I also encourage people to think about how it applies in their personal life, because sometimes we unwind what we're doing as people and what we're doing as leaders. And often you have to practice some of these things as a person first before you
Mhm.
figure out how to apply it as a leader. A couple of resources that people could look at
Mhm.
before before they maybe start or expand their journey into mindfulness. I really like, and I don't have any disclaimers to make. I don't have any
You don't have an
association with.
affiliate link or something.
No, I don't get any royalties from any of this. But a couple of resources I've really enjoyed myself are um, 10% Happier by Dan Harris. He
Oh,
talks about,
yeah.
yeah, he talks about
I have
um,
that book because of
kind of
you.
the, yeah, well, yeah, I think you were a part of our team when we said, let's look at this together. And
Yeah.
we actually bought our team books and said, let's build it in. Let's build it into some of our discussions. Let's start off some of our team meetings with, hey, what was a reflection about the book, or what's something that you've been trying? So that's actually really great that you brought that up, Michele, because if people are listening and thinking about, okay, I'm going to do this personally, but how can I incorporate something with my team? This is just a really easy, straightforward way to do it. Like, gosh, buy a couple of resources for your team, either ebooks or real books, whatever your jam is, and start talking about it a little bit. Because to use one of Michelle's quotes, what does a little bit better look like? What does a little bit better look like? That's
Yeah.
just a little bit better. You don't have to solve the entire journey of mindfulness for your team today.
Mm-mm.
Let's start with just a little bit better. And it's kind of amazing what can come back to you even years later. I had a team member that I used to work with reach back out to me and say, Trina, when you first started talking about mindfulness, I thought you were kind of nuts. And I thought you were, no, it's good to talk about this, right?
So
It's good
funny.
to
It's
talk about it.
like you're out there and woo woo and what is she talking about?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. She said, I thought you were kind of nuts. And she goes, honestly, because this is the kind of psychological safety I have with my team and my colleagues to be able to be this blunt with me. I thought you were kind of nuts. And she goes, honestly, I thought you were kind of overstepping a little bit. And I said, okay. I said, well, thank you for telling me that. That's really important to me because A, I want you to feel comfortable telling me. B, it's going to inform how I approach this in the future. And C, now it's also informing how I maybe advise other leaders to approach it. So think about this with your team. Maybe have some one-on-one conversations with them about how your messaging lands. See where their comfort level is. Maybe even consider giving them a development opportunity and saying, "Hey, would you like to lead this? Would you like to talk about how we could incorporate this on our team? Is it something that's interesting to you?" You might be surprised. They might say, yeah, I'd love to run with that. I've been practicing mindfulness meditation for more than a decade and I love it. So that's a resource. Another resource, which actually Dan Harris refers to in his book, is an author and speaker called Dr. John Harris. Or I'm sorry, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn.
I was going to say they have the same last
They're
name.
not related. No, that was my bad. It's Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. He's written a ton of stuff. And one of his books is Wherever You Go, There You Are, which I love that title. I love that title. So straightforward. And one of those things that you hear where you think to yourself, gosh, I'd like to hear that again. Kind of like the older I get, the less I know. Wherever you go, there you are. So there's so much meaning in that. And I'm not going to spoil the book for people. Read it. It's got a great accessible introduction and some actual mindfulness practices in the different chapters of the book that you can take a look at. One of my favorites is called the Mountain Meditation. So maybe check it out. Let me know what you think. People can message me when you post this and say, hey, I read the Mountain Meditation. I like it too. That'd be great. Or maybe message us and say, what resources have you found in mindfulness? When you respond to Michelle's podcast posting, talk to us about what you've seen, what you've done. Share some ideas, because I think everything that we can do to help each other as leaders and being better leaders for our teams, wherever they may be, that's the purpose of this. One more, and then I'm gonna take a pause.
No, it's great.
Take an internet search on radical acceptance, and maybe what we'll do, Michele, is link it later in the podcast so that people can find it. It's a really short little YouTube video talking about what radical acceptance is and this person's journey with radical acceptance. But let's pause and go back to what you were thinking, and then we can talk about radical acceptance some more.
No, I love that, and I'm making notes. I will do that. It's funny when I ask the question about mindfulness in your practice, incorporating into, the leaders that are in the room with you, is I got to thinking, there's so many things that flooded back. One of them is Gina Temple when she said, when I'm present, I'm present. So when you're present, be present. That's mindfulness.
Oh
It's
yeah. And
it is
Gina does that. She
yes.
does that.
Yeah. Well, so do you.
Oh, well, thank you.
But
So do
it is,
you.
but well, thank you. But it's one of those things that it doesn't have to be, going into a meditation pose or going to whatever. It's about setting the intention for yourself, like you said. What's my role? How am I going to show up? What is it? As we go from meeting to meeting, to reset yourself, and it takes seconds to let go of whatever just happened and then set the intention of the role, who you are, what it's going to be, how you're going to show up, and what you're paying attention to as you step into the next one. It's like, okay, am I working on, to your point, listening? And when I feel like I have to interrupt and interject, I'm going to pause and hold that. And maybe like some of the practice, and I think about, I'm going to call them hacks so that we can get better at this kind of stuff is uh, there's a lot of leaders I've been in the room with, and myself is this, so I share with people what works for me is just jot down a word of this thought that you have in the moment, right? Because it's like holding the dam back when if we don't do that. It's like, oh, I'm going to sit silent. I'm going to be well, just jot the word down because you don't want to you want to lose it, right? So just jot the word down and then re-engage. But that's what better looks like, right? When I think about a little bit better or something else, and then pay attention to how your body feels after you jot the word down and then you re-engage. Because then you can be mindful. You're mindful of what you're feeling, the angst that you may be feeling. I've got to share this. Do you really? And then your role in the room. One of the things that I'll share with leaders, and you did it so well, is that if you're one of the higher ranking people in the room for org chart stuff, you're one of the last to speak with your thoughts and your ideas because you unduly influence the thoughts of others. And unless we're intentional and mindful about that, we could come in and go, well, what do you think about doing XYZ? Well, if you're the CEO or some C thing or executive, whatever, guess what? You think people in the room are going to be brave enough to go, yeah, no, we're going to go with my idea over here? No. So it is, I think mindfulness, when we think about it, is not woo-woo. It's just about paying attention to what's happening in your surroundings, in your own body. Emotional intelligence pulls into that. So when you are practicing mindfulness, your EQ has got to shoot up. So I think it's just all that stuff that, like, how do you know? I had a brand new leader that I was in the room with yesterday, brand new, like a month in, never been a people leader, one person on the team. And well intentioned, the language that she was using, you could hear that she was scared, hesitant about what this role looked like, because it was from a peer to where now the person's reporting to her. And she was using language that was like, well, now that I'm over her, now that I'm managing her, now that I'm whatever. And you could hear the fear in her, but the fear was coming, to your point, from the language she was using, because she was like over her now. And so I listened. And then my personal style of coaching is I don't just sit in a coach role. I'm so sorry for anyone. I coach, mentor, consultant. I float between all of them. And so I looked at her and I told her, I said, this is what I'm hearing. The resistance, the hesitant, the fear, the walking on eggshells. She goes, yes. I'm like, and part of it, I believe, is the language that you're using to describe your role. And I talked about what you talked about, Trina, is that you're on a team. You're not expected to have all the answers. So you magically became a people leader, and so you're going to have all these answers that you never had yesterday?
Right. Right. But that's what
No.
we do to ourselves.
Yes.
That's what we do
No.
to ourselves.
No. It's like saying when people have a birthday, you're a year older. No, I'm a day older than what I was yesterday. I didn't magically become a year older.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like go into it with curiosity. And like I told her, I said, have a meeting with her, acknowledge the elephant in the room. Hey, we've got different roles now. because we went from peers to now, we're on a team and we have different roles. I'm the manager, you're on the team. And as a team, we have responsibilities and goals and outcomes and expectations, and then co-create what that looks like.
Yes. 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 Well, there's so much in there that is awesome. Um, I love the way you coach, first of all. Don't stop doing that. Second, um, as leaders, you think about your accountabilities. And instead of thinking about accountability for answers, you have accountability for the safety engagement of your team. You have accountability for creating and feeding the culture that you want to provide for that team. And you have accountability to continue to develop yourself and your team. Those are your accountabilities. You don't have accountability for all the answers. You just don't. And you can't get to some of those other accountabilities if you aren't making sure that you're not keeping that weight, that burden of thinking that you have to have all the answers. So you're opening yourself to being able to actually be more effective and supportive and compassionate for your team when you can just let that one go.
Mm-hmm.
Let that one go.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm so glad that you're working with her. I'm so glad that you are, because
It's fun.
you think about some of the things that you would like to have known earlier in your career.
The list is
So
long.
for me too.
The
For me
list is
too.
long. Yeah.
For me too. So being able to know you don't have to have all the answers and that things haven't changed in a day just because you move into a different position. Those are really valuable things to be able to take forward and be a more effective, more compassionate leader.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. We have to do this again, please. I mean,
Oh,
we don't
please. I
have
would
to.
love to. I would
I
love to.
would love to do this again.
I would
Um,
too.
okay, good. Thank you.
I
We'll
would
have to,
too.
we will make it happen. You and I, we will make it happen. What do you want and all the stuff that we talked about? What do you want people to walk away with?
Oh boy. That's a great question.
No pressure. No
Um,
pressure. Processor.
I
Crockpot thinker. I'm a microwave thinker. You're a crockpot thinker.
know.
I
I
wrote it
know.
down. You do
See,
know. You
that's,
do know.
yes,
Yeah, you're like
I
that,
know.
Michelle. People
But that's
go,
one of
what
the
do you,
reasons
what do
we,
you think about whatever? And I'm like, I got 50 zillion thoughts about whatever. And Trina's like, let me think about that. I'll get back to you.
well, that's one of the reasons we make a good team,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Some things to walk away with. Um, Not having to have all the answers. Practicing mindfulness as a leader, not just for yourself, but to be a more effective, compassionate leader for your team. Trying to influence them to practice mindfulness because it can help with their own personal and professional development. Looking up some of the resources that we talked about, because one of the ways that we do that is to continue to expand our knowledge and practice. And those are just a couple of resources that we can use to do that, because we only have a short time together today. So being able to give people things that they can, things that they can look at later, I think is really important. And thinking about radical acceptance. And we didn't get a chance to talk about that a lot today, but maybe that'll be part two, Michele, or
I love it.
the next time
I
instead
love
of
it.
part two. But the last thing I would say is thank you. Thank you so much for the person you are, for the leader that you are, for the coach that you are, and for having me on your podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Right back at you. I greatly appreciate it. I I echo all the stuff that you just said, and I think part of it too is it's so funny because when leaders aren't in the room with a coach, right, to be able to ask the questions, hold the mirror up, my whole thing is to how do you know to where you can check in when you're on your own? And we have I don't know if it's a barometer, a gauge and stuff in our bodies. And so what I'll say is this: if what you're saying and what you're thinking has you feeling not great, chuck it aside. It's a lie. It's a lie. And so look at what's really happening, be able to surface the assumptions and the lies and the stories that you may be telling yourself about expectations or everything else, and shift around until you land on something that actually motivates you to move forward. Because that's where the truth is. And so we can check in with ourselves to be able to gauge that stuff as we move forward, to where you don't have to have someone beside you going, but is that really what it is? How do you know that? Where did that come from? Because you can check in with yourself on that stuff. So that's what I'll say in addition to what you said. I love the fact that you are able to impact so many up and coming healthcare leaders, and that they have the chance to be in the room with you. And I don't, maybe they do realize how lucky they are. I am grateful that the healthcare system has the opportunity for people to get exposed to a different way of thinking.
Thank you. Thank you. And I see that as a privilege. So thank you.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. All right, until next time, this has been Leadership Soundbites with Michele and Trina. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And until next time.